Hello, guys. Good evening. Come on in. Come on in. Welcome. Happy, what is it, Wednesday night tonight? Is it Tuesday? Tuesday night. Okay.
Yes.
All right, that's good. That's good. We're, at least I'm, behind. That's good. And I have another day to catch up on my things to do. Well, I want to thank you guys for tuning in tonight. We're talking about a very important issue, and it's winning school board races. And so I'm going to introduce you to Cam Bryan and Hannah Smith in a second. But their race was important back in May. It was a school board race. It's considered sort of a national bellwether on how well anti-critical race theory warriors are going to do, right? How well they're going to do in elections. And so, Cam and Hannah, you guys have just been on a whirlwind media tour because you ran on a platform of unity, which is striking the right tone. And before we get to that, I want to kind of get to your background. I mean, Cam, you're an aviation guy, spent 30 years in the industry. So you've been an executive and you've also been a coach in youth athletics. So you've got operations down, you've got motivation down, you've got the kids down. And I'm just going to go down below. Suter Conrad is with us tonight, which is a great pleasure. He's on our EFA education team. Suter is one of the first teachers in the country who has stood up to, and working teachers to say, I'm going to stand on the side of parents. I'm going to stand on the side of children. I'm going to stand against critical race theory. And I'm not teaching division in our schools. Yay. And so, Hannah, last but not least, you're an attorney. You're a mom. You clerked for, tell us who you clerked for. This is unbelievable. I can't believe that we're talking to you.
Oh, well, you're very sweet. Justice Thomas and Justice Alito.
That's right. That's right. My two favorites. And in fact, Jenny Thomas is a friend of ours, and she might even be tuning in tonight.
Awesome. So, I love Jenny. I just saw Jenny and Justice Thomas at a clerk retreat at the Greenbrier last weekend. So,
well, Jenny is a big fan of our work. And actually, Jenny and I have done a parent boot camp together. So that was a lot of fun. And again, you guys won on a unity platform, but you have to tell the story. I thought I was going to attempt to tell everyone what happened on the lead up to you guys winning. It is a true Dallas soap opera type of story. I mean, you've got everything from a Dallas cowboy leading something to, I think people were arrested maybe or charged with something. And I mean, it's a real look. If you guys can win with almost 70% of the vote, you guys, then we can have people that are in fairly stable districts do the job. So who's the best at telling the story about the lead up to your race?
We can tell it together, Cam. Do you want to do it together?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. So back in 2018, there was a video that went viral in our community. Some high school students, after homecoming at a private party at a private residence, unfortunately were chanting along to some lyrics of a rap song that included some inappropriate racial language. And that video went viral. And our community responded by asking the school district to get involved. Now, of course, the question has become since then, should they really have gotten involved? Because this was a private party off campus, but they did get involved. And the response was really what led up to the 34-page cultural competence action plan that became the basis for our school board campaign. So Cam, do you want to tell the story from there?
Yeah, sure. And a committee named the District Diversity Council was formed as a result of that viral video. And over 60 teachers, administrators, students, members of the community were charged with, okay, what can we do as a community to eliminate discrimination and racism from our campuses. And so, like Hannah said, this committee came up with a 34-page document. We nicknamed it the CCAP, the Cultural Competence Action Plan, which we believe is a vehicle to introduce critical race theory into our schools and all of our campuses. We can talk a little bit about some of the program elements that were included in the CCAP. in a minute, but they also recommended 340 changes to the Student Code of Conduct, which actually also had recommendations, CRT type recommendations in the Student Code of Conduct. So those are the two recommendations that came out of that committee. And so that committee gave that report to our administration. The administration on August 3rd of last year, 2020, tried to force a vote in implementation through the board. And our agenda comes out for our board meetings the Wednesday before the board meetings on Monday. So our community had, actually, I think it probably came out on Friday for the community. So our community had about 3 days notice that this was coming out. And you can imagine a vehicle to introduce these types of policies in a conservative community, and also advising the hiring of an equity and inclusion director to oversee the implementation of this didn't sit well in our community. And it was remarkable what our community did in just 3 days to prepare for that board meeting on Monday. And so what happened on Monday was, at the board meeting, is that they changed the vote to essentially accept it for further review. So they accepted it, gave it back to the administration for further review, which is illegal because it wasn't part of the agenda for the board. So that's where it stood there. And then, Hannah, I'll let you take it over with the legal stuff.
Yeah, so pretty much from there, our community just started formulating a response and banding together with like-minded parents and showing up at board meetings and meeting before the board meetings to prepare what we were going to talk about and create talking points. The community also just started doing a number of open records requests. I think the total number was something like over 400, which was astronomical for our district. And so the open records requests were all about how this plan had already been implemented and what parts had already been accomplished. And we learned a lot from those open records requests that helped us prepare comments for the board. And then we also just started to really be more attentive to what was going on in our kids' classrooms. You know, this was a really important part of it. You know, we had a lot of moms who were very in tune with what was going on with their kids, and they would bring home assignments that were about social justice, or, you know, in language arts, you know, read your favorite social justice book and write a, you know, paper about it, and just sort of bringing up, you know, these things as they became apparent. So we really just galvanized, and we formed a PAC, and the Political Action Committee also helped organize our community into different committees that helped organize our volunteers. And then really it came down to, in December, looking forward to the next election for our school board trustees. We have 7 school board trustees. 2 of them were coming open, and they were not going to be incumbents in those races. So they were open seats, and Cam and I decided to throw our hat in the ring, and we started our campaigns in January. And the campaigns really focused on educating our community about the CCAP, what was wrong with it, why we thought it was a bad plan for our district, and asking the community to elect us so that we could ensure that this kind of divisive political ideology did not find its way into our school district.
Okay, yeah, so there's a couple of key themes that you hit on. And the key theme that I'm picking up on is transparency. And so even in Texas, so we've got an EFA, we've got 2 EFA chapters in Texas, and it's so weird, right? Because Austin is like, I remember when I first met you guys, I thought I was talking to Austin, and Cam piped up and he goes, that is never going to go on in here. And I'm like, wait a minute, wow. And so, you know, it was then I learned how diverse everything was. So transparency, what we do here at EFA is we teach you guys about every 6 weeks how to do FOIA requests, etc. One of the things that we've run into here is personally, I've run into myself, and I've been a journalist for 6 years. I just had my first stonewall of the Department of Instruction here in North Carolina wanting to charge me $1,500 for something that's very, right? So something that's very basic. It would take, you know, an intern about 15 minutes to find it. So did you guys ever run into that during your...
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We had open records requests that came back with an email saying, well, we've identified the documents that you would like, and it's going to cost you $2,000. So sometimes, when it wasn't that huge of an amount, we would pay it. Other times we would more narrowly focus the request so that it was a smaller subset of those documents so that it wasn't quite as expensive. But oh yes, we certainly ran into that.
And I will say too, with the open records request, it wasn't just a few members of our group. It was a real big community effort. And when Hannah said over 400, that wasn't just from like 5 people. So the administration knew they had to take us seriously because it was, I don't know, Hannah, how many different people in our community, but it had to have been over, 50 to maybe even 100 filing open records requests. So, it was that serious, and they had to take it serious. And we found if you do that, and you send enough, you're going to find some gold nuggets. And we found plenty.
Right. And what people need to realize is a couple of things. First of all, when we talk about open records, the records are yours. They belong to we the people. So that's what I first want you to recognize. And then remember this, that transparency is for the government, privacy is for the citizen. And what we are seeing now is that has been completely reversed, right? And so what we're looking to do in running for office, I would imagine, I don't want to put words in your mouth, you guys, but restoring that balance, right, where it needs to be, where the government is once again transparent, and then students can have their privacy, parents can have their rights. Is that sort of where you're taking your administration now?
Yeah, I think that was a really key theme. I think the whole CCAP encounter between the community and the district uncovered some key missteps by the district and the board that led to a serious loss of trust and a serious loss of community unity. And I think that, our campaigns really focused on those pillars, right? Transparency, accountability, representing the community's values. We are voted in as trustees to represent the values of our community and to make sure that we are transparent and accountable to the people who elected us. And those were the themes that we spoke about that I think were really in the breach because of the CCAP debacle.
Yeah, and it's amazing, now that we think back about it, that we actually had to run on putting students first and refocusing on academics, if you can believe that. Reading, writing, and arithmetic versus values, behaviors, and beliefs, which has no place in education or in our classrooms.
Yeah, and I love that slogan. What you've done is you've broken it down to a bite-sized piece so that everybody can understand, because, when you've got things that are complex, that favors those in power. That is a diversion technique. So to the extent that we can distill it down, you're right. The diversity training, it sounds wonderful. Equity training sounds wonderful. What it is and what you recognize and what we all need to recognize here when we're looking through and doing our homework on what the current policies are, it can be a way to scapegoat or stereotype or collectively punish students with a certain skin color or who do not subscribe to the orthodoxy of transgenderism, for instance. And we're finding a lot of that. We're finding that we've got gay parents who have children and say, wait a minute, they're after me. We actually talked to a family today where they're after me because I don't want my second grader to start learning about gender confusion. This is a gay couple. So in other words, this is not being done to service the children. It's not being done to broaden the outlook, right, of society. It's being done in a lot of cases to see what they can get away with in terms of inappropriate indoctrination.
Yeah, well, we had talked about this before, but, all the feel-good words, diversity, equity, inclusion, don't even, we tell people, we'll talk to you about that, but let's define those 3 terms first and make sure that we're on the same page, and we'd be happy to talk to you about that. Same with critical race theory.
Okay, Amy says, would you please repeat I won't say it's a slogan, but the key points of what you're getting at during your campaign? Cam.
I think that was your slogan.
It was? Oh, yeah. Hannah and I did everything together in this campaign, and we're still doing everything together. So we kind of finish each other's sentences, which is pretty scary. But anyway, yeah, I said that we put students first. We had to put students first, campaign on putting students first and refocusing on academics, getting back to reading, writing, and arithmetic, not values, behaviors, and beliefs. Values, behaviors, and beliefs have no place in education or in our classrooms. That's taught by the parents. That's taught at home.
Right. So my background is media psychology. And so when we talk about attitudes, beliefs, behavior, that's called behavior modification. That's a program. And then that would be involved with propaganda. And so when you're looking at levers to affect attitudes, values, and beliefs, from a theoretical point of view, I mean, values are politics. That's what it is. And when you're looking to have an agenda to manipulate those, that's genuinely as a science what we're looking at. It's rarely involved around education. It's usually making people buy a product or vote a certain way.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that. We have found on our very first meeting as newly sworn in trustees on the board, one of the agenda items for board consideration that night was adopting a new preschool curriculum for our district. And we had done some homework before the meeting and looked on the website of the company that hosted this new curriculum. And they used a company for their social emotional learning that had a website that was full of books on how to be an anti-racist and other such books that they recommended to their customers. And they had, whole letters from their CEO and press releases about their commitment to using social emotional learning as a lever for equity.
Correct.
Of course, we know that equity is at the heart of the critical race theory propaganda. And so we, caught on to this and we went to our, district and we said, this is not acceptable. We're not going to approve a preschool curriculum that has a social learning component that's all about equity. And so we stopped it. But it was just so ironic to me that we had been running a campaign for 4 months about not, needing equity in our district. And yet the very first board meeting, we had a preschool curriculum that might have it in it. I mean, it just shows up everywhere. And our joke was, it's kind of like that whack-a-mole game that you used to play as a kid, where you just have to whack it every time it comes up. You just push it back down again. And so that's what we view our job as trustees is to just play whack-a-mole with this, and just wherever it pops up, we're just going to bang it back down.
So Christine's asking, how do you address the racial division of those who think that, you're victimizing children by not teaching correct history? So I'll take this one if you don't mind. Teaching history is not a problem. Let's talk about teaching history. Let's talk about teaching the difference between, if you want to, Democrats and Republicans 100 years ago. Let's teach about, Woodrow Wilson. Let's teach about this. It's selective history. And really, I think progressives want to teach selective history and reconnect folks with a history of 400 years ago and weaponize it. So weaponization of history, not good. And as you just intimated, Hannah, this isn't history. This social emotional learning, this castle social emotional learning that we have in North Carolina, because we're one of the target states, it's in homeroom, it's in basket weaving, it's in math, it's in PE, it's in art, it's in literally everything. And so I'll tell people, hey, I don't mind learning about history. Let's learn about Woodrow Wilson. Let's learn about people that actually did the Wilmington race riots. Let me teach you a little bit of that. Oh, no. Oh, okay, I get it. And so then the bloom is usually off the rose when we start doing that. But you guys, the thing that you've done that is so different from anything that I'm seeing is that you guys have made yourself the expert so that your constituents put their trust in you. They know I can relax because Cam and Hannah are up on this, and it means first of all, you're going to be more transparent. You've got nothing to hide. And secondly, I don't have to stay up on these things and push it because I know immediately. So you know that immediately when SEL came on, you're like, not having it. And more importantly, you're probably able to articulate that to your other board members in a way that's persuasive because it's based in fact and research. And so is that what you know, that's what I'm gathering from you guys.
Yeah, Hannah mentioned it earlier, but we really did a community education effort. I mean, it was massive. We had over 70 meet and greets, probably double or triple that of private meetings of citizens in our community, just educating them on not only the plan, but what it was, and some of the concepts behind this and where to find it. And what we're seeing today is that our community, which has always been very engaged in their children's education. It really is a generous, unbelievable community that we live in here in South Lake, Texas. And what we're seeing now is a heightened alert. It's a microscope now on every single classroom. And so our parents know what to look for. Our teachers know what to look for. Our principals know what to look for. And it is really refreshing to see that as we start the school year here in about 3 weeks. It's really going to be a great year, we think.
And so what you're describing is a system of mutual respect. And, you guys are different. You guys are, about 30 minutes away you're a suburb of Dallas. And so that's your location. Austin, we've got a completely different thing. It's like they're turning kindergarten classes into Studio 54. It's unbelievable what they're doing there. And so, and so what we're trying to do in North Carolina and in Atlanta and Georgia and other places is say, look, we need to find out parents that are going to school board meetings. Incredible. Evidence is king. And so with you to the school board meeting, you need to bring out evidence. You don't just want to kick in the door and say, I know critical race theory is going on. I just know it. It is. Here's the problem. This is stereotyping and scapegoating. Help me understand this. And so what I tell parents to do is go in and talk to the teacher first. The teacher, first of all, they have been instructed or mandated to teach a certain thing. It's not always their fault. And that's why I brought Suter on here, is that it's not always the teacher's fault. I mean, it can be from a number of places, but then take it up the line. Then by the time you get to the school board, you can say, I've spoken to these teachers. I've spoken to the district. This is what the state is making us do. Help us. Because we're finding that the SEL, right, is coming down from the state. A lot of the things. So what you guys are doing as school board members, we want teachers doing, Suter, we've talked about this before, and we want parents doing their homework as well. And that's really important because knowing what happened and where it's coming from is a diagnostic on how to stop it. For you guys, it's a diagnostic on how to win the race. Suter, for teachers, I've talked about this a lot. It's where it's coming from and how to stop it. So Suter, really quickly, I really want you to talk about the diversity trainings that are offered just generally, right? Because this is something, Cam and Hannah, I want to ask you guys about, because teachers are going to vote for the school board members that can protect their civil rights. Suter, tell us kind of what's going on as you understand it in school board or in districts across the state.
Well, I know for us, it started with us this year. We had our, what they called equity, bias, race, and power training. We had 4 of them this year. What's ironic to me is that 3 of them were mandated and 1 in the middle was not. So I don't know if they got scared in the middle and then just made it mandatory again. But they started out with giving us a matrix of oppression where we had to fill in, our gender, our age, if we had disabilities, our race, our religion. So, and based on that, obviously the only one I've got that apparently is a, could be a, how did they put it? Do you have that up at all, Sloan?
Yeah, I'll show everybody what we're talking about here. And so this is the training. It's really what it is, guys. And I want to tell you guys so you don't have to put on your telescopes here. But it is in fact a way to it's a race confessional. So it's getting teachers to confess that they're guilty, they're implicating themselves as either, here's the categories, you're either a privileged social group or you are a targeted group. So it is asking, what race are you? If you're white, you know where you are. If you're a biological male, if you are a gender conforming biological male or woman, because we're drilling down deep here now tonight.
Mhm.
Sexual orientation. So if you're heterosexual, you're out of luck. If you're rich, upper class people, if you're a teacher, that ain't gonna happen. So at least you got out on that one, right?
Right, that one, and I guess I'm a biological woman, so apparently I'm targeted for that too. So
well, you're out of luck there. If you're temporarily able-bodied, well, I've got a bum hip, so I guess that gets me out. If you're Protestant, you're an adult. But what happened in Suter's case is that she had not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 trainings, and I think 6 months or what have you.
Mm-hmm. And really, I think this was the worst because you have to. And then we had to talk about these in a public, as in everybody that works for Charlotte Mecklenburg could see it on a discussion board. And we had to pretty much say, I'm, privileged or targeted, depending on what our subgroups were. I think the last training, which was actually the shortest, was probably the most shocking to me. Had the do you have that one? Do you which one I'm talking about? The circle to pull up.
I'll look at that one. Yeah. But so Suter, what we've talked about is there's going to be this is new. I mean, Cam and Hannah, you'll acknowledge that this is completely new. Is running for school board, et cetera. We're going to see teachers like Suter run, right, and give them a lot of strength and power. And we also want to elect school board members that will be a place to go and will defend the civil rights of both children and parents. I mean, Hannah, are you dealing with anything like this? Have you heard?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, I'm very concerned that a lot of teachers don't know that they have rights under the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII. It deals with employment and what employers can do and not do based on protected categories: race, gender, ethnicity, religion, disability, all of these different protected categories. Employers can't use them in the incidence of employment. So whether that's hiring or promotions or placement or firing, you can't do any of those employment actions based on those protected categories. And I hope that more of our teachers understand that, this act applies whether or not you're a person of color. It applies to white teachers, that they have rights underneath Title VII. And a lot of these trainings actually, I think, flirt with the edge of legality under Title VII. There was a really great piece on Tucker Carlson recently. A member of the U.S. Civil Rights Commission was on there talking about this exact subject and how CRT training for teachers could very well be a violation of Title VII. And so I think it's something that we need to be very concerned about. Title VI also is relevant for students, and there's a variety of other federal laws that protect teachers and students from being discriminated against based on those categories. So I think we need to be really, really careful when we start to go down this pathway, because we are potentially violating the very civil rights laws that were passed to protect people from being discriminated against.
Well, right. And I'll tell you this too, talking about that, it also, this year, it wasn't really put into our curriculum and our system. I mean, obviously the NCDPI, which is the North Carolina Department of Instruction, they have put it in for next year for our social studies standards plus our SEL. But because of these trainings, I know teachers at my school decided to take it upon themselves to make lessons like spot the difference.
Yeah.
A couple of different grades, and we're talking about kindergarten and second grade. Kindergarten to second grade, they put together a spot the difference between Antifa riots and the Capitol riots, showing, police brutality with Antifa as opposed to the Capitol Police just letting people in, which, that goes down a whole different pathway. But those are the things, because of this training, they really thought, well, apparently because I'm taking this training, I can go ahead and take it upon myself to start this in our classrooms. Which, right. That was where I really started seeing the tides turning. Not to mention, teachers that actually are against this are terrified to come out.
That's exactly right.
I've been threatened.
Yes, and we found that in our city too. And, we actually did a newsletter we sent to all of the teachers and staff in our district. We had done an open records request asking for all of the email addresses for all of the teachers and staff in our district, and they had to give them to us. So they gave us all of the work emails for our teachers and staff. We crafted up a newsletter and we sent it to them. And we said, we are here to help you. Please let us know what is going on inside the district. We know that you're worried for your jobs, so we will stand up and be your voice when you can't speak. And we had teachers respond and give us quotes that we used anonymously up on our website that talked about their concern for CCAP and CRT and what it was already doing to them in their classrooms and between their students. It was very powerful, and we used those in board comments as well. So I would encourage you all to be the voice for those teachers, because they don't like what is happening and they don't want to do it. And after Cam and I won, I had teachers come up to me when I went to visit kids on their campuses, and they would say to me, I couldn't say anything during the election, but we're so glad you won. Thank you so much for standing up for us. So we really have to be their voice.
And that, that's just, it's sad. And that's one thing I told Sloan. I was one of those that wanted to stay anonymous. And the more I prayed and talked to my husband and my family, and I just kept feeling, if everybody stays anonymous, nothing is going to change either, because hopefully me being able to come out will also give somebody else courage, including the parents too. Like I think Allison over here said, parents are afraid too. I mean, you get some terrible backlash, but one thing I want to point out is people like Sloan. I have had numerous groups from around the state, even around the country, like surround me. The good, it outweighs the bad always.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, we, EFA in Texas, EFA in Georgia, here in North Carolina, wherever we are, we always tell people, look, we've got to be the strength in numbers. We've got to be the voice. Number one, as a group, and I just want to say this to all of the groups out there, you have to provide value for the end user. Cam, you and I talked about this beforehand. We came out of the business world. If you're not providing value, you need to step off the stage. So as a group, whenever you're forming these groups, going to school board meetings is really important. But the real question is, what problem are you solving? Just having another group is not going to solve a problem. And so Suitor, you providing, and you guys are saying the same thing, you're actually soliciting information from teachers. School board candidates, I want you to do this. I want you to go to teachers first and have a circle or a meeting and go and say, how can I protect you? But, our group in particular, how can we serve teachers better? A lot of groups are out there making enemies out of, quite frankly, the school board members and, quite frankly, the teachers. And so we're looking at it this way. How do we create a partnership? And building trust and transparency is number one. Knowing your stuff, knowing what you're talking about is number two. And I think listening is number three. It's a lot easier to listen when you sort of know a little bit, do your homework, and give respect to the people you're actually going to be asking questions to. And so I would say that is a good start. For instance, Hannah, you knew what the policies were, and you guys broke that down. You had a War and Peace novel that you broke down into bite-sized, provable things, but you did a service to your voters. And that's what we need to do.
No, that's actually very correct. And I think that, everyone has something they can contribute. And we had an army of people who were willing to stand up in the way that they could contribute. We had moms who were, looking at their kids' assignments and showing us brain pop videos about BLM. And so we got brain pop taken out. And, we had other people who had communication skills who created videos for us that we could then send out through social media that took clips from board meetings and took clips from other things and showed what was really happening through our open records requests. We had other people who were great fundraisers who raised a lot of money for our group. We had other people who would just knock on every door and go and, pass out flyers. Everybody had a role to play. And I think that it really was amazing to see the synergy between the talents of all of the people in our community.
And can I interject here? You were talking about how to, make it more accessible too. one thing is, like you said, the parents need to be aware of what it looks like, because they can see on the news or on streams like this, well, critical race theory, we talk about equity, we talk about, anti-racism and things. They still don't really know what it is. And I think, that's, there almost needs to be a teacher training that, or not teacher training, a parent training about exactly what is going on.
Do you mean a parent boot camp, Senator?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes,
yeah.
like a parent boot camp. And you know what else? The first step, even before you ask your teacher, ask your kids. Parents, make sure you know exactly what your child is doing. And if your child's like, I didn't do anything in school today. No, that's not a sufficient answer right now. You need to see their work, see their canvases or whatever online things that they have, because going forward after lockdowns and things like that, they're going to be using online even more. Look at them, have their passwords, make sure you can see their stuff. Because like I said, some teachers, even if it's banned in certain states, are going to do it anyway. And obviously the National Education Union is coming out and saying, we're going to put it in there no matter what. So that's to me, the first way is to watch your kids. Watch what your kids are doing, ask what they're doing, then go to the teachers.
Yeah, I think that's right. And my question, we talked about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, you guys, where, a lot of people here and in other states are going to the school board and saying, there's critical race theory, look what's happening, et cetera. And we're finding that sometimes the state, through these computers and through the online learning, the state is actually sending these invasive surveys, this SEL.
Yep.
So what are you guys going to do about it? Because you want to be the firewall between whatever the state is raining down and whatever DC is forcing upon you. Is there an easy answer?
Well, it takes a lot of work. And I know that Hannah mentioned earlier about this pre-K curriculum. Well, that's an ed tech program where you're seeing more and more of education technology curriculums being introduced in our classrooms, especially the younger elementary school classrooms. And you really, really have to pay attention to that stuff, because the SEL component of these ed tech programs typically have this type of CRT ideology, this political ideology mixed in with it. So you really have to really dig deep. And in Texas, the Texas Education Agency and the State Board of Education are in charge of curriculum. And what you're seeing with these ed tech programs is a teacher may not know what's being taught, because they're being turned into facilitators rather than educators through this education technology. And so they may be just facilitating a student paying attention to the screen while the technology is embedding this political ideology in them. And that is something that, we're trying to really educate also our community and our teachers, that got to pay attention to what's going on in ed tech, because it is all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just add too, that's really right.
Sad.
And I appreciate you saying that. And I do want to add that, like, a lot of these federal grant programs that are coming out of the Department of Education are also now, under the Biden administration, having strings attached that have to do with equity. President Biden's domestic policy advisor at the very beginning of his administration said that a central policy for their administration was going to be equity in everything. And they have been true to that promise. I mean, if you look at the ESSER funds that are coming out of the Department of Education to relieve learning gaps due to at-home learning during COVID, the most recent ESSER grant has strings attached to it that do relate to SEL and equity and all of those things. So, you have to be really careful when you take money from the federal government when they have these strings attached, because it will mandate you to include some of this stuff that you really don't want to have in your district. So read all the fine print and be aware of what those strings are.
Yep.
Right. And you'll find almost everything that you need to know, guys, on your state board of instruction. It's usually out there. And one of the requirements for a federal grant is there's a period where the public can comment, right? So there's an open period. We let you guys know when that was. I think it was about a month ago. But again, I mean, Cam, you talked about this before with the transparency. They'll say, okay, our comment thing is open. They'll bury it down and you'll never find it. And it's like, oh, gee, that's over in 3 days, right? And so, you know, that's why we need groups like the EFA, and we need other groups to help you guys do your job so that we can be a watchman, look out, explain to people what it is. But these ESSER funds, I mean, we're having it, you know, for culturally responsive teaching. We know what it is. We know what it is. It's critical race theory teaching. And then we're having, you know, superintendents be, let's just say, less than honest about it. Why? They want to keep the dough. They want to keep the dough on flow. So they will lie and say, of course, you know, you what's the matter? You don't want history taught or whatever. And we go through this no matter if they're on the left or the right. And so that's why we have to be watchful. And so I want to just, I just want to say that another thing that you have really talked about is you guys were on point. You have a PAC, you had volunteer, you had people, you know, doing what they needed to do. A lot of times what we have are groups from all over the place and they don't work well together and it's hard to get everyone in line. Did you do anything in particular to get all cylinders functioning and focused on winning this race?
Oh, yeah. We had volunteer meetings where we brought everybody together. Like I said, I mean, we were meeting before every board meeting to coordinate what we were going to say at the upcoming board meeting. We came up with different topics we were going to address. People were assigned different topics and we came up with talking points. And, you know, those meetings really formed the core of our future volunteer meetings for our campaign, right? The people who show up at board meetings were the most stalwart volunteers on our campaign trail. So those people then became the ones that turned out for the texting and calling parties and, you know, the door-to-door knocking parties and, you know, all of those things. It was that core group that had shown up to speak at board meetings. And I really appreciated their steadfastness and their willingness to continue to fight because it was many months on end that they were showing up to make sure that we won. And we did. I mean, on election day, Cam and I won 70-30, a 40-point win, which was huge for our district. And, you know, for most municipal elections in South Lake, the voter turnout was like 3,000, maybe 3,500 people. We had almost 10,000 people show up to vote.
Wow. 3 times the amount. Yeah. Wow.
45% of our registered voters turned out for our election, whereas they usually have like single digits for voter turnout.
Less than 10.
It was huge.
Yeah, and it was great because our core people, you know, it's kind of like when you fix up your house and your neighbor sees it and they go, oh, that looks good. I'm going to fix up my house. And their neighbor sees it. I'm going to fix up my house. Well, our core group worked so hard for us that, you know, other people saw that. And it's like Hannah said earlier, we built an army. People kept on volunteering and helping and growing, and the wave got bigger and bigger and bigger. And, you know, the week prior to our election, May 1st, we had early voting. And the get out to vote effort was absolutely tremendous. I mean, we ran almost I would say it was, Hannah, would you say it was a professional campaign? We had all the components of a campaign that any candidate would want. And we were able to do that because of the generosity of our community, not only given their financial help, but also their time, which is absolutely huge.
And I would say that generosity was just amazing. I mean, we had Cam and I both raised over $60,000 each for our individual campaigns, which normally you would see like $25,000, maybe $30,000 for a school board race, but we raised twice that amount for each of our campaigns, which was amazing. And I think it just goes to show you how committed our community was to defeat the CCAP. I mean, they really wanted us to win. And so when you have that kind of backing behind you, you can do a lot of really amazing things.
Well, you guys do your stuff. You broke it down and you were unified. That is something that I will tell you, the county that I'm in, we had 9 seats up last time, and all the candidates were saying something completely different. In other words, it did not run on a slate, right? They had their own team. There was a lot of infighting. You see this all over the place. And so really committing to run on the values rather than, individual agendas and things like that, I think is important because look, if you're running for the same county or the same district, the issues are the same. And so I would encourage everyone to run as a slate, I think that probably benefited you. Do you feel that it did?
Oh yeah, I mean that was our strategy going in. That everywhere you went around town, you saw Hannah and Cam signs together.
Yes.
You never went anywhere. A yard sign, always it was Hannah and Cam yard signs. So the strategy was, let's run as a ticket. Let's hold every event, every meet and greet, anything that we do. Let's do it together, so that people that associate with Cam, they're like, okay, well, oh, there's Hannah too, and oh, people associate with Hannah, oh, there's Cam, so that we were able to kind of galvanize the community together behind both of us. And I think that paid big time dividends, because we had the same message, same platform, name recognition, same energy, same group of people working behind us. It just really was a neat experience.
Yeah, I agree totally. And, you know, in our school district, all of the seats are open seats. Like, we don't have districts within our district. So, you know, we could run, it didn't matter where we lived in our school district. We just ran the open seats. Somebody asked that in the question, so I just wanted to respond to that.
Yeah, that is where I am. Charlotte Mecklenburg is, I mean, it's not just Charlotte, it's all the surrounding cities that are in Mecklenburg County. So they have to separate into districts because it is so large. That's one of the issues I have with Charlotte Mecklenburg.
Right.
It's so large.
But the problems are, but I want to stress this to you guys, that let's take something that is balkanized, right? Like we think it is, and let's make it together. And that's what we have to do, because the issues are the same. There's got to be a platform. There's got to be something to coalesce around. And I think that there's lessons learned from all these other ones. I would say that another tip that I'm giving to people that are running for school board is maybe not in your area so much, but in these bigger areas, is that we start, of course, we know that the parents are disaffected, right? So disaffected voters, that's the low-hanging fruit. Disaffected parents is always a low-hanging fruit. But you've got to be able, guys, when you run your campaign, you've got to have an issue that is going to make, I just always say, a prototypical 56-year-old male, doesn't have kids, doesn't like kids, doesn't care about it. If you can pick an issue that is going to get him up off his couch and go vote on a Tuesday night when he's never done that, that's your issue. And we've got a lot of them this time around. So, you know, really getting the community involved, that is something that we have not done a great job with in a couple of the districts that we were involved with last time. But there are some serious issues, and you have to sort of tailor them to different groups. For instance, people with grown children. Well, there are things that they care about. I can tell you, any minority community, when you start talking to them about age inappropriate lessons of transgenderism, and again, the age inappropriateness of it, I can tell you right now, that does not compute for them, and you will get them out. They do not want to see that. They don't. Now, progressive areas, obviously, you know, some of the winning issues on progressives, because we get a lot of them, the surveys. Progressive voters do not like the invasive surveys. How do we get that point across? Well, we'll go to a farmer's market or somewhere like that, and we will show a survey or give the survey to someone and say, hey, sir, can you fill this out? If we don't get punched in the face right away, we'll say, they'll say, wow, no, I will not fill that out, and you can go somewhere. We'll say, wow, third graders are being given that survey. You show, you don't tell, right? You show, you don't tell. These are universal issues. So the survey is universal. You guys, you have to find a way that this is going to be universal. Your comfort zone is talking to the parents. Stop doing that as much. Right? In these bigger districts where you don't have that many people, you've got to start getting these issues out in front, because look, most people have a sense of decency. They do not want to be told that, hey, at 2 years old, children need to learn what their gender is, and parents don't have a right to call little Johnny, because little Johnny hasn't made up his mind yet. These are the lessons that are being given by the progressive. These things are absolutely abhorrent on their face. These are radical ideas. These are the ideas we need to socialize in all other parts of the community. That's what I need you guys to do.
So one of the arguments that I made as well on the campaign trail was, where does equity lead? And you can look at places like California and Massachusetts and New York and Illinois, and you can see where educational systems that have already completely revamped their districts based on equity audits, you can see where that leads. And where it leads is to the elimination of gifted and talented programs. It's happened in New York. It's happened all over. So, I would raise that on the campaign trail. And I would say, look, if you're really concerned not with equality of opportunity, but if you're concerned with equity of outcomes, then this is what happens. You start to lose your gifted and talented programs. You start to see honors courses being taken away because they want to meld all of the students together, honors and on level, so that nobody's better than anyone else and everyone is the same. And when you start doing that, parents get very concerned because they move to good school districts because they want their kids to have the opportunity of engaging in these higher level courses so that they can go at their own speed and learn at their own rate. And that was a very successful part of our campaign, was just revealing through newspaper articles. I would just, rip out the headlines and bring them with me to a meet and greet and read from the newspaper, from the Wall Street Journal, from the New York Times, from, the California papers. This is what is happening because of equity. And people said I was being alarmist and I was distorting things. And I was like, hey, I'm just reading the newspaper articles.
That's right.
Conclusions.
Well, I can tell you right now, it's not. Our high schools here, our school improvement teams is what they're called right now in high schools. I had somebody send me minutes from them. That's something else parents need to know, how to navigate the websites for their schools, because all of this has to be transparent. Right now, they're meeting to talk about things like the equity and also about how to get certain children out of AP classes to put other children in.
Yes.
So that is majorly going on in the high schools in Charlotte, and I'm sure all around our state and all around the country. So that goes right into that.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And I don't even know if parents are aware their child might be kicked out of their AP class to put somebody in that hasn't gotten in, but based on their merit.
Hey, Snooter, do you think there should be an article about that?
I think that would be a fantastic article.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you queued us up. We have an article right here on that. And so with Ed First, what we do is we kind of take a similar approach to you guys. We love to support candidates by making sure that the issues are covered. We're investigative journalists. We cover these things and we are, cutting edge on that. We need more of it because you guys in your campaign had to do that. And another question I want to ask, I'll just kind of end it here, is that we're a national group. We're located in 26 different states, definitely strong in Texas. So how can national groups like ours support good candidates like you who are not only running, but you've won your race? And so how can groups like ours partner and improve governance in school districts all across the country?
One thing that Hannah and I are doing, and we're in the early stages of that, is forming a conservative school board coalition. And the purpose of that is to have a one-stop shop, because this could be very overwhelming to somebody that's just a regular mom or dad like us that want to run for school board and they feel convicted to do that. We want a one-stop shop that allows people to go to the site. How do I form a PAC? How do I, what are the strategies to get out to vote? How do I run a campaign? What are the resources out there? Okay, well, Sloan, this is where you would come in. Here are the resources, education, the alphabet groups that are out there. It's a one-stop shop for people to be able to go find other people that have been successful to ask questions, find groups like yours, Sloan, to reach out to you to ask questions for help, encouragement, what have you. We just think that something like that needs to be out there. There's just, everybody is doing stuff, but it's not being done together. And it's important for us to be able to unify. I mean, the left never sleeps, right? They're unified. Yeah. They don't sleep. They're organized. They have been doing this for decades, and we're seeing the repercussions of that. It's high time that we step up and get that out there so regular moms and dads like us can run for these school boards and can win.
Yeah, I'm so excited because for the first time ever that I've seen, conservatives are interested in reforming the school system. We've never been interested in that. We've always been interested in school choice. We've been beating that drum for years, but we've left the battlefield. And so none of us should be surprised that now we're embedded in a culture war. It's definitely not of our choosing, but it's actually good that it's here. I'm excited. This is going to lead to a revitalization of conservative values. And it's going to really, I mean, I always say that education and these issues, it's the gateway drug to activism. And so what we're seeing here, a lot of apolitical parents who decide that it's really not conservative values, you guys, it's common sense and American values, right? So they're finding that we have gung-ho Republicans that are sort of like, wow, I'm sort of mad at our party because we've abdicated this to other people. And we have Democrats that are like, yeah, I'm getting off at the next stop on the crazy bus here. This is nuts.
Well, it's family values. Family values is what it is more than anything.
Which what we aspire to. And it's Hispanic and it's people that have come to this country and they weren't born here and they appreciate it. And they're like, look, we're going to be here fighting alongside of you. We're going to make sure that you guys don't screw up your country because guess what? We don't have any place to go. And we're finding a lot of that. So in this fight, there's a lot of people that you would think really, Hannah, are uncommon, but we're actually alike, if that makes sense.
I totally agree with everything you just said. And I think it's really important to realize that the coalition that's going to change all of this can include people who might not necessarily agree on everything politically, because I think you said it earlier, Sloan, when you said that there are, sort of classical liberals who care a lot about free speech, who are absolutely horrified about the microaggression tracking and the other things that they see being advocated in CRT and by the really radical left. And so you can find common cause with a lot of different people. We had, moderates who supported us because they knew that we would get in there and really balance the budget and focus on education and cut out the political indoctrination and focus on transparency and accountability. And so you can find people to join common cause with to reform our schools. And I would just say, as one last plea, don't abandon our public schools. We can't abandon them to the left. We have to stay in and we have to fight and we have to do everything we can to save this education system. Because if you leave and you homeschool your kids, which I've done before, and it's a wonderful experience, but all of those kids being left in the public school, they are your children's future fellow colleagues and fellow employees. Yes. Fellow work, place mentors and all of that. And so we have to be equally concerned with our public schools as we are with our own children.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, this is a lot of people ask me, because I'm a conservative, people say, why are you in this? Like, we're school choice, man. What are you doing? Look, this is an American problem. I mean, we're Americans. We're the greatest, most, benevolent nation on earth. And when we see suffering and massive human rights abuse, we act and we protect children. We do it, oceans away, but charity begins in your backyard. And so, yes, my children are in a public school. A private school. They've been in public school and I'm able to do a private school, but we're not going to let children be abused. And what we've seen are children and teachers being abused. Good teachers are leaving after they've been abused for years, right? And then they're actually, in some cases here in North Carolina, due to a shortage of teachers, they're hiring non-teachers that come in. They're basically radicals that have come in off of the protest line. Yep. We can't let it happen. And saving this country, it needs to start in our schools. It absolutely needs to start in schools.
And not everybody can afford private school. So the ones that can't, those families are a lot of times the ones that we really need to focus on the kids not being indoctrinated.
Yeah, well, that's right. There's a lot of abuse going on. And look, my hat's off to you guys. I appreciate you coming on. Really, winning the school board issue is so important. And I'm glad, guys, what I also gathered is, Hannah and Cam, you gave us an end game here because we know a lot of people are spending copious amounts of time going to these school board meetings, really important stuff, but you made an alliance there. And that's when you had your training ground, right? To come out and to kick ass. And so you did it. You got everybody involved. And so, thank you guys again for being on. Thank you. Thank you, EFA Texas, for helping put this on. Thank you, Suitor. And you guys keep the questions coming. I'm going to have you guys on again, and then we're going to talk about some other things that you have going on.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful evening.